divorce lawyers of Reddit. What's the most screwed you've seen someone? My mother divorced my dad when I was like 2 years old. They had bought a house together and my dad's family offered her fair value to buy the house from her. She denied the offer and puts it up for sale publicly. My dad's family buys it for 40% less than what they offered my mom in a public bidding auction. Probably thought she'd get more by turning them down. Can't imagine she was thrilled they got it from her anyway, paying so much less than they'd offered. Husband and wife are getting divorced after multiple attempts to reconcile. Husband is an attorney, though not family law. One of the attempted reconciliations includes wife losing some weight and sending husband some naughty pictures. Once divorce litigation started, husband sent these pictures to wife's minister father asking if he knew what a W he raised. During litigation, husband also drove around at night with their 2 small children in the car to find wife's car at a friend's house and pour airplane acid. Yeah, apparently it's a thing. All over wife's hood. Airplane stripper. It's really just paint stripper that auto body shops use. I've worked as a legal assistant for 2 family law attorneys for the last 8 years. One of the cases that made me the angriest was a man who cheated on his wife when she had cancer. He then leaves his wife and attempts to hide all his assets while she's undergoing chemotherapy. Fortunately, my boss is a badass. She teamed up with a forensic accountant and they took him to the cleaners. He even had to pay the forensic accountant's bill and attorney's fees. One of my father's friends tried to salt the earth before getting divorced. A rental house and a cabin were deeded to relatives. The cars they drove every day were sold to other relatives for tiny sums. Stocks handed over to a trust for the children, etc. He even vanished a chunk of cash from the company he co-owned with his wife using phony invoices and stopped paying himself a salary, electing to burn through their personal savings for over a year instead. He learned that judges really hate when you try to hide or intentionally diminish assets, and they will absolutely refer you to prosecutors for fraud. I don't think he did any jail time in the end, but his ex-wife got everything, plus the satisfaction of firing him from his own company. Not a lawyer, but I knew a guy who lost his own cell phone number. He had the same number since high school, but she convinced the judge that she used his phone enough to get his number. Basically, he kept his clothes and car and had to pay alimony. That is so freaking petty of the ex-wife. I'm not a divorce lawyer, but we once went to her open court with uni, and it was a divorce case. Our whole class was there watching them get divorced. It was a Dutch business guy and his Eastern European wife. She was talking about how he forced her to do anal and BDSM against her will and crap. Their children were also there watching, and I remember feeling so bad for the kids. They were like 12, 15, and not only did they have to watch their parents divorce, they had to hear about their father's fetishes that he forced on their mother while an entire class of uni students was watching along, gasping like we were watching a freaking movie. The lady was crying while she was talking about all his fetishes that she absolutely hated. Judge asked if he ever was violent and she said he slapped me on my face and butt, but only during intercourse, but I didn't want it. I remember seeing their 15-year-old daughter, completely red face and eyes filled with tears that she tried to hold in. Looked like she wanted to bury her head into the sand. Felt so terrible for that girl. Meanwhile, the girl next to me kept pushing her leg against mine every time this lady spoke a word, like OMG, did you hear that crap? That was probably the last time your uni went to open divorce court, lol. Friend of mine is a divorce lawyer. His favorite is the time the husband in a bitter divorce got some slimy lawyer and said he would outlawyer her and break the bank before giving her anything she wanted. This was in front of my friend, her lawyer. He looks at her and says, "I'm working for you pro bono, free." From this moment forward, he looks back at them and says, "I got all day." My favorite divorce story of all time. My buddy meets girl, gets married, la dida. 6 months later, she runs off with another dude. After a couple months, my buddy filed for divorce. He told her, "Listen, we've been married 6 months. Let's do an uncontested divorce since you haven't worked or anything. And I own everything and did before I met you." She puts up a fight and eventually comes to, "I had a car coming into this marriage and I'm leaving with one." She sold her car for some dumb crap. He offers her the truck, 10 years old with 150k miles, but meticulously maintained. She said nope, so off to court they go. She got zip, nada, empty-handed. My favorite justice boner of all time. My father-in-law had a stroke at the age of 46. He lost the use of his right arm and the ability to speak. Shortly after his stroke, his wife decided they needed to move into a smaller house and sell their current one, which was under his name and he had paid for. This also meant she was kicking out my brother-in-law and my wife, girlfriend at the time. She also decided to put down my wife's cat and get rid of the family dog since their new house wouldn't have pets according to her. She sold their house at a loss and immediately bought a new car with the money. My wife and her brother found a new place and my father-in-law and his wife moved in with one of her kids. After 6 months she dumped him at my wife's place and said, "I can't take care of him, we are getting a divorce." I don't know how it happened exactly, but she got half his money and a new car. She then went to all his family and lied to them and somehow convinced them that he was being abusive and didn't love her anymore. We tried to convince him to fight it, but he refused to do anything because he was so depressed. The lawyer ruled he was of sound mind so he could make his own decisions. My wife is still upset about it and wishes he had tried to fight it, but he still loved his wife so he didn't want to. He lives with us now and it's doing a lot better emotionally. There are so many terrible people on this thread. On my year abroad in the US, I took a domestic relations class ran by an ex-judge who told us a few good ones. The first one was a couple who gathered their entire stuffed toy collection and split them in court, each taking turns to pick. He said they weren't even collectibles, a lot of cheap ones you'd get at the fair. My favorite is where both parties were both being unreasonable and not thinking of the kids. In the end he awarded the house to the kids who would permanently live there and the parents who had joint custody would take it in turns to live there. His argument was that the kids' lives should take priority. Best thing was neither party could afford to buy an additional place on their own, so the couple had to rent a small flat together and also share that. Pretty badass judge in my opinion. That's such a great idea by the judge. It's called nesting. I suggested to my ex that we do this but he said no. And surprisingly, divorce lawyer and mediator here. I once mediated the case of Neckbird v. Tiger Mom. It must have started out as the perfect dream for Neckbird. He landed a hot Asian wife, brought her to this country, but once that green card came through things changed. They had a daughter together and the case was mostly about her. Tiger Mom had zero respect for this guy and try as I might to maintain my empathy, I've never felt a greater urge to stuff another human into a locker. Two of his demands really stand out. He asked for the following injunction. Tiger Mom shall be enjoined from discussing Neckbird's weight in a derogatory manner. Specifically, Tiger Mom may not refer to Neckbird as fatty, tubby, pudgy, or Baymax. Normally I wouldn't take an offer like that to the other side. I'd normally help a guy come up with something more sensible, but everyone, including his lawyer, just could not take this guy seriously, so I wrote that out verbatim and trotted over to Tiger Mom's room. Of course she thought it was hilarious. She had a super thick accent and said, "My daughter call him Baymax cause he look like Baymax, I can't fix that, he have to fix that." There comes a point at the end of the day when everything is pretty much settled and people are dividing up the crap in the house. Of course Neckbird has a meltdown at this point and it's over a dang Nintendo Switch for the daughter. Tiger Mom made the very sensible proposal that the daughter take the Switch with her to each parent's house as she goes back and forth. Neckbird freaks out and demands the Switch stay with him at all times because there's no way Tiger Mom can take proper care of it. Mind you, the attorneys are billing enough to pay for 3 Switches an hour at this point. I don't know what happened to the guy, but I do know calling him Baymax could land one lady in contempt of court after the most hilarious enforcement trial of all time. And he owns what's probably the most expensive Nintendo Switch in the world. Client's husband was an elected official, may still be, and signed a separation agreement. He fails to do anything he agreed to, so the wife sues and he fights, saying that she forced him to sign. She shows emails where he negotiated the agreement and agreed on the final draft, and she showed emails where she tried to work with him on payments he owed her. He loses after making his staff member come into court, who testifies that he didn't think he was being forced to, and having a meltdown in court. Rumor was he threw his elected title around the judges a way to get them to help him. A few months later he shows up to contest the actual divorce, citing the same stuff, and then says that she threatened to shoot him. Judge sides with the client. He has to now pay her like $6,000 or get thrown in jail. All could have been avoided if he responded to the emails she sent him. My parents got divorced when I was 12. I am sketchy on the details, but I remember it was long, drawn out and acrimonious. Eventually, my mum was awarded a massive settlement. My dad was basically left with superannuation and nothing else. After the ruling was handed down, my mother's own lawyer walked into my father and his lawyer's meeting and said that ruling was BS. You should appeal. Gotta be pretty bad when a lawyer wants his own win overturned. Well, the lawyer will get paid twice as much by too long and drawn out court battles, no matter what the second ruling is. I can answer for a friend. His wife was divorcing him because he is an unreliable idiot. He figured that he was smarter than everyone, so he dragged out the process as long as he possibly could, making it as difficult as possible on her, scheduling and rescheduling meetings, not showing up, promising to do a thing and then backtracking later, refusing to negotiate at all. I think his plan was to make the divorce so difficult on her that she would just stay married. He was also doing all this process so her lawyer had to deal directly with him. After a year of this, his wife had had enough. She told her lawyer to make it happen. So the lawyer set a date and the court served him notice of the divorce proceeding. She showed up to court and he wasn't there. So as the only party there, she got a very one-sided deal. She got their business, custody of the kids, the house and all contents, her car, and the bank account. He got his car, his clothes, and half the proceeds of the sale of the house when she decides to sell it. That's it. He found out about this when he called the court a week after it happened. What had happened is her lawyer served the divorce notice to an address in a different town with a similar name. Normally this would have been caught by his attorney, who would have received notice directly from the court. But since he had no attorney, there was no one other than him that the court could send it to. He finally hired a lawyer and tried to get the settlement tossed as he claimed he was never served, but the judge said there was nothing he could do. Not an attorney but work in family law. My favorite is the man who accidentally texted his family group chat with a message meant for his mistress. Ianal, only a relative of one. Plus I know both of the parties, but the sheer WTF factor of the whole case more than compensates. A teacher starts her job at the high school I attended at the time and immediately starts hitting on a student. Student is male, 16-year-old. Teacher is female with ink literally drying on her diploma, so 24-26. Things progress to the point where school administration takes notice, and while the teacher isn't doing anything, throw your butt in jail illegal. Local AOC is 15. It is one of the things that can get her fired on the spot. This is Europe. Firing a public employee without a bulletproof case against them is extraordinarily difficult. School administration is lenient and she ends with a stern warning and is prevented from teaching in that particular class ever again. Student graduates. Some time later they marry, build a house and have 2 kids. Fast forward 10 years. Teacher, now in her early 40s, repeats the performance on another student again, M/16-year-old. School administration tells her she either resigns or they will go all the way on her, tanking her whole career in the process, so she does. Her husband kicks her out of the house and files for divorce. And here comes the kicker. Neither party wants the kids, and the teacher continues her relationship with the new student despite everything that happened. More of an estate issue, but deceased man was married 9 years ago to a woman. These are what I call late in life marriages, where a woman with nothing marries a retired man with a house, retirement income, and time to vacation. Man brings a fully paid for house into the marriage. He takes out a mortgage to presumably afford vacations and new wife expenses. Bank requires both names on the mortgage, so he deeds it to them as joint tenants. 2 years later, she leaves him for another man and was never heard from again. A couple months ago, he finds out he's going to die. He immediately files for a divorce, but it was never finalized. He created a deed to his children, not valid because it would need her signature, and a will which describes in detail how terrible she was and disinheriting her completely. Doesn't matter because state allows a wife to avoid the will and take 1/2 of marital property. He died before anything could be done. She now owns the only remaining assets of the house and a marital car. Even though the son moved into the house and took care of his dying father for 2 years, no heirs will receive anything. She will receive a hefty house and 20k car. Just frick her. An accountant, not a lawyer. I had a buddy, a good guy, but he thought with the wrong head. Divorced one woman, Fell into relationship with this bimbo blonde who messed around on him. They had started a business together but all the designs were his. She wanted the designs. I went in as his witness and testified about the amount of money they had invested and that yes, the designs had all existed before the marriage as I had helped him set it up. Well, they spent months fighting about it. Her attorney was a crook. $35,000 each in legal bills. Both filed bankruptcy and guess what? He got the designs and business, but had to sell his house and leave town. Of course got married again, got taken again. Then number 4 had 3 kids and she screwed him too. Some people never learn. He is almost 60 with 3 kids under 10. Sounds a lot like my uncle. Dude had everything to be a retired millionaire. He is not. Not a lawyer, but a dramatic divorce story. I know a man who was falsely accused of domestic violence during the separation from his wife. She lived in the marital home and he paid for everything for her despite her having a full-time job. She got a boyfriend who didn't work and allowed him to live in the house. My friend went to meet her at the house for a final time to decide who would take what from the house. He was recording everything on his phone without her knowledge as he was afraid something would be said or happen that might be held against him. They couldn't agree. He left and found out she had called 911 and reported that he had made death threats and assaulted her. The divorce went downhill from there. He spent $14,000 on lawyers to finally have the charges dismissed. During his criminal ordeal she sued him for $250,000 in alimony. The recording saved him with the police and to this day she insists he assaulted her. An unbelievable crap show. False accusations like that are the worst. When my parents split up, they weren't married, just living together. My mom's lawyer advised her that custody hearings would go a lot smoother in her favor if she said my dad had hit her. She refused, thankfully, and custody was a bumpy road for years. Not a divorce lawyer but my sister and her family was a second-hand victim of one. Place they were renting was owned by a couple who were going through a less than amicable divorce. Went to court 3 times over the settlement and by the 4th time the judge ordered that all their assets they acquired over their marriage, 2 houses and 3 cars, were all to be liquidated and be split 50/50. Now, but here's a couple. They have a kid. She gets pregnant again, but the prenatal testing comes back with really bad news. The kid is going to be severely disabled, with a raft of health problems. He wants her to get an abortion. She says no. The baby is born, and her condition is just as bad as predicted. So he's got my sympathy up until this. However, he gets a girlfriend, files for divorce. He's thinking they'll just split everything. And here's his idea of the split. She can have 1 kid. The one that had 4 surgeries before she was a month old and requires 24-hour care, who might eventually learn to speak a few words but will never understand why she is always in pain. And he'll take the healthy kid. She can have the car. He'll take the house. He just wanted the wife and child to vanish, and he admitted this to the judge. The judge was not impressed. Wife got custody of both kids, the house, the nicer car, and he was ordered to cover all the medical expenses for the rest of the disabled child's life. I was told he started to argue and his lawyer told him to stop talking. Nope. Dad wanted visitation only with the healthy kid, so the judge ordered him to pay for the disabled kid's care during every minute of visitation time so mom could have a break. Guy starts to argue again and his lawyer told him to STFU if he wanted to have any assets left at all. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.